Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something pretty incredible. We're going to travel literally billions of years back in time to explore what is, honestly, the greatest story ever told. The relentless persistence of life on Earth. Just take a second and imagine a world with no cities, no sprawling green forests, no animals whatsoever, and absolutely no humans. Just a fiery, chaotic ball of rock floating in the dark. So how on earth did we get from that to the world we know today? Well, let's dive right in and find out.
Long before there was even a breathable atmosphere, these core evolutionary mysteries were just waiting to be solved. If you trace the family tree of every single living thing back far enough, you're going to hit these incredible turning points. I mean, who was the very first human? What was the first animal to ever exist? Which bird first conquered the sky? And, what was the first insect to crawl across the dirt? Now, these aren't just fun trivia questions. They're the fundamental milestones of our very existence.
So, here's our evolutionary itinerary for today's journey. We'll start with the birth of Earth, then move to the dawn of the animals, and see how life conquers the land. After that, we'll watch dinosaurs take the sky, witness the rise of humanity, and finally wrap up with a story of survival. This whole path is going to guide us from a totally lifeless planet all the way to modern humanity. All right, Section 1, the birth of Earth. From molten rock to the cradle of life, we are starting our journey in a truly hostile environment, a totally lifeless world defined by continuously erupting volcanoes, rivers of lava, and just relentless asteroid bombardments.
4.54 billion. That absolutely staggering number is how many years ago our planet first formed. Picture this, dust and gas swirling violently around a very young sun, just slowly clumping together to form Earth. At this stage, temperatures were literally high enough to melt solid rock, and there wasn't a single drop of oxygen for us to breathe.
So 4.54 billion years ago, Earth forms. But then, as the planet gradually cooled down, something basically miraculous happened. Water vapor condensed and rain began to fall. And I'm not talking about a quick afternoon shower here. I mean rain falling continuously for thousands of years. This filled up massive basins to create the very first ancient oceans. And it was right there, in those warm waters, somewhere between 3.5 and 4 billion years ago, that microscopic organisms first appeared. These simple, single-celled life forms, they sparked the unbroken chain of life that leads directly to you and me. Which brings us to Section 2, Dawn of the Animals, the humble pioneers of the sea. For billions of years, life actually remained incredibly simple, just those single-celled organisms hanging out in the water, until the very first animals finally appeared in the deep.
Now, when we think of the quote-unquote first animal, we usually picture something with, teeth or claws. But I want you to meet Ottatavia. Living over 760 million years ago, this pioneer was basically just a simple sea sponge. It had no brain to think with, no eyes to see, and literally no muscles or organs. It just kind of sat there, filtering nutrients right out of the seawater. It's just wild to think that this absolute underdog marked the dawn of the animal kingdom. Without this humble little creature, whales, birds, and us humans, we'd simply never have existed. So, how exactly do we get from sea sponges to complex animals? Well, the answer is the Cambrian explosion. Around 541 million years ago, evolution basically stepped on the gas pedal. Suddenly, in what's a relatively short period geologically speaking, countless new, complex animal species just rapidly appeared. We're talking creatures with eyes, jaws, armored shells, and limbs. Predators emerged for the very first time, which meant life suddenly became fiercely competitive. The basic foundations for modern animal groups were all established right here in these ancient oceans.
Moving right along to Section 3, life conquers the land, leaving the oceans behind. Having completely filled the ancient oceans, life's next massive frontier was the barren, rocky surface of the continents up above.
Now, when it comes to this terrestrial migration, you really have to notice the order of events, because it wasn't animals that conquered the land first, it was actually plants. Around 470 million years ago, the first land plants emerged, totally transforming that barren, rocky landscape into a green habitat. And this is what paved the way for primitive arthropods to follow. Just a bit before that, around 480 million years ago, the first primitive, wingless insects, kind of similar to modern silverfish or bristletails, evolved from ancestors living near the water and began crawling across these damp environments. And then, 400 million years ago, insects achieved an absolute evolutionary masterstroke. They took flight.
70 centimeters. Okay, To put that into perspective, that is the incredible wingspan of Meganeura, this massive ancient dragonfly. As insects achieved flight, it allowed them to colonize entirely new habitats and easily escape predators. This was a huge evolutionary advantage, and it led to giant predators like Meganeura becoming one of the largest flying insects in Earth's history. Just imagine a dragonfly the size of a small hawk zooming past your head. Crazy, right?
But hey, while giant insects were ruling the skies, our own distant vertebrate ancestors were making a monumental shift down in the mud below. Step 1. Ancient fish evolved stronger fins to help them navigate shallow waters. Step 2. Over millions of years of adaptation, those fins developed into limbs that could actually bear weight. And Step 3. The very first amphibians emerged. These guys were the ultimate survivalists, capable of living in the water and walking on the land. This whole transition is exactly why every terrestrial vertebrate today has 4 limbs.
And that brings us to Section 4. Dinosaurs take the sky, the rulers of the planet. With vertebrates now thriving on land, the stage was perfectly set for the age of reptiles, leading directly to the dinosaurs who would absolutely dominate the Earth for more than 160 million years.
Let's look at Archaeopteryx, for example, living 150 million years ago during the Jurassic period. This creature is the famous transitional fossil. It's like the smoking gun of evolution. It clearly had dinosaur traits, teeth, clawed fingers on its wings, a long, bony tail. But it also sported modern bird traits like actual feathers and wings capable of flight. It just brilliantly illustrates the bridge between giant reptiles and the sky. It's a great reminder that every single pigeon, eagle, or even penguin you see today is actually a feathered descendant of the dinosaurs.
On to Section 5. The rise of humanity, from the shadows to global pioneers. While those massive dinosaurs were ruling the daytime, tiny nocturnal mammals were just trying to survive in the shadows, staying out of sight to avoid being eaten. That is, until a sudden, violent catastrophe changed the hierarchy of life on Earth forever. 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid collides with Earth. Dust completely filled the atmosphere, blocking out the sun. Food chains utterly collapsed, and almost all the dinosaurs were wiped out in what we call the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event. But, and this is a really massive but for our story, many of those small, hidden mammals managed to survive. With the giant predators suddenly gone, these mammalian survivors diversified so rapidly. Over millions of years, some became whales, some became bats, and crucially for us, some evolved much larger brains, eventually giving rise to primates.
Let's fast forward millions of years to the number 300,000. That is roughly how many years ago the very first anatomically modern members of our own species, Homo sapiens, appeared in Africa. Now, while many ancient species definitely contributed to our ancestry, it's at this specific point that we really see humanity's true beginnings.
Unlike earlier human relatives, Homo sapiens possessed the unique traits really necessary to take over the globe. We developed sophisticated tools and advanced cognition. We started communicating through complex language, which allowed us to collaborate like never before. We created ancient art and formed highly structured societies. Because of these unique evolutionary advantages, early humans were able to cross vast deserts, traverse mountains, sail open oceans, and eventually spread across every single continent on Earth, except Antarctica. We rapidly became the most influential species in the planet's history.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 6, a story of survival and the legacy of evolution. If there is one major thing you should take away from this explainer, is that the story of life is definitely not a straight, predictable line. It is a chaotic, complex, branching tree of adaptation.
Every single organism alive today is the result of an unbroken chain of survivors, built right on the backs of these specific pioneers. The sponge-like Otavia that sparked complex ecosystems, the bristletail ancestors that transformed the land, the feathered Archaeopteryx that conquered the air, and Homo sapiens, who reshaped the planet entirely. All these pioneers persisted through volcanic catastrophes, brutal ice ages, and devastating mass extinctions. They prove that, against absolutely extraordinary odds, life always finds a way.
This quote captures it perfectly, I think. The greatest adventure ever told is not merely the story of Earth, it is the story of life itself. From microscopic cells in ancient oceans to intelligent beings capable of exploring the stars, our understanding of our own origins just continues to grow. So as we stand here at the very edge of this 4.5 billion-year-old timeline, I want to leave you with this thought. Given the unbelievable odds our ancestors overcame to get us here, how will humanity's unique chapter shape the future of this incredible story?